In the beginning of 2020, the Trump administration was confident about the upcoming election. Think about it. The economy was booming. ISIS was on the verge of being defeated. The wind was at his back. But that momentum would come to an abrupt halt.
A mysterious and deadly virus has led to screening of airline passengers arriving at 3 U.S. airports from Wuhan, China, the epicenter of the outbreak. 2 people have died and dozens are ill with the pneumonia-like symptoms.
Early 2020, my chief of staff at the White House started to attend these meetings about some kind of health crisis in China. It was very opaque. Late January, a number of us, including me, were summoned to the Situation Room at the White House.
We didn't know where it was. Donald Trump had a gut instinct that, by the way, proved absolutely accurate, that it was from the Wuhan lab.
Trump had another gut instinct.
On March 2nd or so, 2020, we had a scheduled meeting with the drug manufacturers in the cabinet room. I happened to be part of that meeting. And I watched President Trump take what was supposed to be a meeting on drug pricing and turn it into a meeting about the vaccine. And he said, how do we get a vaccine? People need to be vaccinated. He never talked about mandates. He wasn't forcing anybody to do that. This is the once in a century pandemic. And he said, I know you're going to tell me it takes a long time, takes years and years. We don't have years. And the drug manufacturers, who normally are competitors, immediately became collaborators.
Unfortunately for Donald Trump, there were fixtures in the government that supposedly handled pandemics, and they were named Anthony Fauci, and the CDC, and the FDA, and the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases. And these career people were not friendly to Donald Trump.
By April, the U.S. had the most reported COVID-19 cases and deaths, becoming the #1 global hotspot for the virus. In an election year, many criticized Trump.
Trump was driven to the brink by all of the attacks. Here is a thin-skinned, maybe egotistical, narcissistic person, but the attacks so relentless, so vicious, that it really started getting into his head. It really creeped him out, and I think it made him a lesser president. Whereas if he had been more welcome, if people had given him the benefit of the doubt, I think he would have been a much better president.
To curb the spread, states across the country implemented shutdowns, which cost millions of Americans their jobs.
COVID-19 destroyed his signature accomplishment of a boom economy. And then secondarily, it really cramped his signature campaign style. Not being able to do the rallies for a long period of time, I think hurt his campaign very badly.
It seems things couldn't get worse for an incumbent running for re-election until an unarmed black man was killed in Minneapolis, triggering nationwide riots.
When the George Floyd death occurred, we had 120 days of nonstop riot, looting, and arson. 35 to 40 dead. We had 1,500 police officers injured. We had $35 billion of damage inflicted.
Donald Trump is going to win. It's not going to be as close as people think, and I've said that since the summer when his poll numbers were low. I still believe it today.
After all, Trump defied the pollsters in 2016. Could he really lose to a doddering, gaffe-prone Joe Biden?
Trump, I think, who is super confident, had every reason to believe that he would beat an opponent who, let's face it, very rarely left his basement and had trouble drawing a crowd of more than a couple hundred people.
I was there when Trump was assured by the people running his 2020 campaign, everything is fine, you will win every state you won in 2016 plus a few more. Everything was not fine. That just was not true.
But there were moments that seemed to be breaking Trump's way. He, Trump, caught COVID himself and, in what seemed like a miracle, recovered in a few days. And after liberal Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, he moved quickly to replace her with Amy Coney Barrett, making social conservatives' long-held wish to overrule Roe v. Wade all but certain.
Tonight, here at the White House, President Trump returned to swear in his 3rd nominee as Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, a woman of outstanding intellect and character.
Then, 3 weeks before the election, the New York Post published a bombshell story that threatened to blow up the Biden campaign. A laptop abandoned by Hunter Biden contained thousands of images of his drug-fueled benders with prostitutes, an email suggesting Joe deployed his crack addict son as a bagman in a massive international influence peddling scheme. Though the FBI knew the laptop was genuine, a cabal of former intelligence officials, social media giants, and members of Trump's own Justice Department scrambled to rescue Biden by discrediting and limiting the distribution of the post-expose.
Joe Biden say, 51 experts say it's not. Well, they had cooked that whole thing up. Mike Morrell, as we remember, had received a call from Tony Blinken and said, can you get the old team out to lie, basically, and say that this is Russian disinformation?
There are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan. They have said that this has all the five former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And that's exactly what.
Is this
that's
where you're
exactly
going?
what.
This is where he's going.
November 7th, Joe Biden was declared the 46th President of the United States.
President Trump seemed more surprised that he lost in 2020 than that he won in 2016. They should have won outright and overwhelmingly. They should have said, we're in the middle of a global pandemic, civil unrest. You know, with the pre-COVID economy and energy and national security and foreign border security, crime was down, all of it. Everywhere you look, things were improving. Why would you change horses midstream? Why would you go for Joe Biden who's hiding in his basement? Why would you trust the vice presidency to Kamala Harris, who was even worse than anybody thought?
Trump couldn't accept he'd lost.
As the vote counting continues, the Trump campaign presses forward with lawsuits seeking to challenge the election result.
President Trump's campaign making a filing in the Third Circuit Court of Appeals after District Court Judge Matthew Braun dismissed a suit on Saturday, saying they presented, quote, strained legal arguments without merit.
Friday, November 13th, the president called me at my home in Cleveland, and we spoke, and I was very kind of consoling to the president. I'm sorry, Mr. President, it was close, you did a great job.
That apparently was not what the president had wanted to hear from his old friend.
Monday, the 16th of November of 2020. I called the White House operator, as I always do when I was calling the president, and he never picked up the phone. She came back and said, the president's not available. And then I never spoke to him again.
On January 6, 2021, the day Congress was to officially tally the electoral votes, President Trump spoke at a Stop the Steal rally.
We have come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
But it was not peaceful.
Following a planned march to the Capitol, chaos ensued. The Capitol building was breached. Some rioters smashed windows, as you can see there. Others rushed inside. Some Capitol police, sadly, were hurt. Seemingly within minutes, the Capitol was completely breached.
January 6th was a terrible thing because of the optics and then what it represented. There was a demonstration, and Donald Trump knew there was a big crowd. He should have been more careful, but he did say, I want you to demonstrate peacefully. Don't riot. Of course, that was the implication. But when you put that many people in a volatile situation who are angry about the election, and you put them inside the Capitol when the Capitol's not open, then that's a dangerous situation.
I've been an early, consistent, vocal, visible critic about the actions of January 6, 2021. I never saw that was coming. I wish the FBI had and told us a little bit about it. That is their job.
I was so grossly disappointed that I pledged never again to support him for elective office, and I feel that way today.
The chaos unfolded on TVs across America.
January 6th was a day that was totally avoidable, and I do blame, in large part, the Trump 2020 campaign. The people running his campaign should have won outright and overwhelmingly the way they promised him he would. But instead, the opposite happened. And had there not been so much doubt in so many places and spaces and states about the election, there would be no January 6th, there would be no President Biden.
The House voting to impeach President Trump for the second time, charging him with inciting insurrection at the Capitol last week.
In a snap, Trump became the only president to be impeached twice. Had he been convicted, he could have been barred from holding office again. He was not. Trump violated another norm on January 20th when he skipped Biden's inauguration. The last outgoing president to do that was Andrew Johnson, who snubbed his successor, Ulysses S. Grant, in 1869. 18 months after he left office, Trump suffered another unexpected loss, a personal one.
Breaking right now, the former President Donald Trump says that his ex-wife and the mother of his 3 oldest children, Ivana, has died.
The only time that I've really had any conversation with Donald since he's been in office was at Ivana's funeral. And Donald came right over to me and he said, "Can you believe that this happened?" He said, "After everything that we've been through, that this should happen." He was really distraught. So he took my hand and he was really reminiscent about how great she was and what a great mother she was. And I've never really seen Donald that emotional. You know, he was really quite upset. They were the golden couple. Young, handsome, beautiful. They just changed the whole face of Manhattan.
Meantime, it was becoming clear to the country that the 76-year-old Trump was plotting to run again in 2024. It would be his biggest comeback of all. The only other president to win a second non-consecutive term was Grover Cleveland in 1896. But it was also becoming clear, at least to the legions of loyal Trump supporters, that his familiar nemesis was arraying to stop him before a single vote was cast.
Earlier today, the FBI raided the former president's Florida home, Mar-a-Lago, while he was in New York. According to President Trump, the agents swarmed his residence unannounced, breaking into the home and even his personal safe.
Undeterred by allegations that he broke the law by mishandling classified materials, November 15, 2022, he announced he was running for a second term.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
Trump is the heavy favorite for his nomination. I really believe he will be nominated.
Donald Trump's dominance in the polls in 2023 particularly is explained in a couple of ways. One is, typically when you want to hire someone for a big job, you hire someone who's already done that big job somewhere, somehow else. And many Americans are saying, that guy had the job and did a really good job, and I want him back.
Trump seems to be indomitable.
But Trump's legal woes didn't end with the documents at Mar-a-Lago. Not even close. Manhattan's district attorney won the race to become the first prosecutor in history to indict a former president.
Yesterday, Mr. Trump pleaded not guilty to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records, including transactions associated with alleged hush money payments to adult film actress Stormy Daniels.
Alvin Bragg came in as a prosecutor in New York. He looked at the case, campaign finance impropriety, said there's nothing there. And all of a sudden, Donald Trump, private citizen, says, I'm going to be president. And that transmogrifies into a 34-count felony indictment of Trump. So everybody understands that they weaponize the government to destroy Trump.
I never thought anything like this could happen in America. Never thought it could happen. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it.
The New York indictment is the biggest bunch of bullshit. I think that the Alvin Bragg indictment of Donald Trump is shameful. I think it is an empty gesture. It's made up, 34 counts of nothing.
Would criminal charges kill Trump's comeback or make him stronger?
A number of people were telling President Trump that the indictment's good for you. It's going to help you in the polls. It's going to help you get elected. I have a more nuanced view that I've shared with him. If ever you have a choice between being indicted and not indicted, take door number 2. Don't be indicted. That's not very obvious.
But his polls did go up, and they stayed up. Even after a jury ordered him to pay $5.5 million to E. Jean Carroll, who sued him for sexual assault and defamation in connection with an incident she alleged happened in a Bergdorf Goodman dressing room in the 1990s. In June, Trump was indicted a second time in Florida over his handling of the classified documents found at Mar-a-Lago. And in August, a grand jury in Washington, D.C. indicted him on 4 federal charges tied to his effort to overturn his loss in the 2020 election.
And breaking right now, former President Donald Trump indicted for a third time. Special counsel Jack Smith says it's about the January 6th riot, except the charges have nothing to do with the riot.
To some observers, it was Trump derangement syndrome writ large.
I read through this so-called January 6th charging document indicting Donald Trump on 4 counts, 2 counts of obstruction, 2 counts of conspiracy. This is a complete embarrassment. At this point, they might as well hang a banner over that main entrance to the Department of Justice building tonight, covering the credo with Biden 2024.
And then
It's Tuesday, it is August 15th, and we begin with breaking news. President Trump indicted for an unprecedented 4th time in Georgia, alongside 18 co-defendants, in what amounts to a racketeering case related to the 2020 election.
Former President Donald Trump, the current frontrunner for the Republican presidential nomination in 2024, is now, as of today, facing a total of 91 criminal counts in 4 separate indictments.
Trump's defiant Georgia mugshot is the first of a former president. If anyone thought it would hurt his popularity, they were wrong. Instead, his campaign raised millions by putting it on mugs and T-shirts. But Trump's legal woes didn't end.
In a civil fraud lawsuit claiming the former president and 3 of his children intentionally misled banks and business associates by falsely inflating information about his net worth and real estate values.
This case is a scam. So is it conceivable that he'll be the nominee of the Republican Party while under these criminal indictments? If so, he will wear them like a badge. He will use them as example of the political persecution that he's been subjected to. And I still think that he will be more than competitive as a candidate.
It's even conceivable Trump could be convicted and jailed in the middle of the campaign. If so, he'd be only the second candidate to run for president from a jail cell. The first was Eugene V. Debs in 1920.
All of these actions against Donald Trump now, the rape case, the fraud Stormy Daniels case, the Mar-a-Lago documents case, all of these cases, to me, don't amount to a hill of beans. They are all attempts to circumvent the electoral process and defeat Donald Trump without having to actually beat him at the ballot box. I predict that nothing is going to stick of any of these legal actions. It's all attempts by desperate Democrats to avoid facing him head-to-head and beating him at the ballot box. To me, they should concentrate on that rather than these attempts to short-circuit the process. Because I really do believe that Donald Trump should never be able to win the office again, but he should be defeated by the voters, not by politicians or lawyers.
Donald Trump is 77 years old, has a great life, he's a billionaire. He owns lots of golf courses and loves to play on them. He could just go do that. But that's not what he wants to do. He wants to go back and finish the job he started. And people see that.
I think the 4-year hiatus in which he runs again has given him a lot more space to think about what he's going to do and why he wants to do it. So it may wind up being a plus for Trump that he had this period of time.
Since childhood, Trump has been a fighter. And if his past is any indication of his future, he isn't going away anytime soon.
We talk several times a week. He always starts out asking me how my kids are, asking me how I am, do I play golf yet? And we talk a lot about policy, a lot about his accomplishments, an awful lot about the polls. And I know President Trump relies upon me and a few others to be his muscle memory, the amazing accomplishments of this first several years in the administration, particularly, and the successful and fun and just once in a lifetime 2016 campaign, which was like lightning in a bottle, magic. And he also knows that I deliver the truth to him, always respectfully, deferentially, but completely candidly.
The powers that be never liked Donald. They had their own game plan of what they were going to do and how they were going to do it, and Donald just came in there and shut them down. And they weren't willing to accept it, and they still aren't. They're never going to accept Donald. Donald is a man of the people. The people love Donald.
Because history is written by intellectuals, people on the left, academics, journalists, in the immediate short term, they're going to continue their disparagement of Donald Trump. He's the first president that was tried in the Senate as a private citizen. But I think in the long term, people are going to say the left overreached, and they weaponized the government, and they really came very close into destroying the idea of a nonpartisan, transparent government, given what we saw in the FBI and the CIA and the DOJ. And then we're going to concentrate on the actual record of Donald Trump. And that will be adjudicated by before COVID and the riot period after George Floyd, and then after. And I think it'll be a pretty positive appraisal of his administration, a positive appraisal of how he weathered this lawfare.
So who is Donald Trump? Love him, hate him, or however you feel. It's hard to think of a more incredible American life history. Of course, we'll need a lot more time to issue its final verdict on the man. That's true of every president. It's especially so when the last chapter is yet to be written. And as we've seen, what happens next with Donald J. Trump is almost impossible to predict.